Remembering Aleppo by Farid Karim. How does one remember their city? How does that city remember you? What happens to those memories after 5 years of civil war only to be displaced? For my grandparents, this new place is in Sweden. The project will therefore investigate how the domestic traditions and memories of displaced Syrians are hosted by generic environments. Aleppo is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world, with unique domesticity that pays tribute to both multicultural and industrious pasts, exercising tolerance for the sake of trade. However, conflict has turned tolerance to terrorism. My grandparents left a small Christian neighborhood northwest of the old city. Pre-war photos from 2002 depict quaint domestic activities. My little sister playing computer games, or me riding a bicycle in the living room. To anyone else, they show a specific moment in a generic scene. However, for someone who can relate, those objects have the potential to be nostalgic cues which further unlock the matrix of memory. The top 3 floors of the building have since been destroyed. Understanding the relationship between personal and digital memory will begin to unpack the Aleppan domesticity that lies within. This connection has resulted in a memory of the 5-year battle for Aleppo that constitutes to 836 megabytes of data, less than 1 gigabyte. As accessibility to social media increases and AI web crawlers advance, systematic fact-checking and digitally archiving reported incidents has meant that the Syrian unrest is one of the most documented conflicts in recent history and is available to live stream, resulting in an ever-growing library of amateur footage from which translations, abstractions, and reconstructions can occur. Before remembering Aleppan domesticity, we must first understand the foundations on which it is built upon. Commerce. What takes a week to be sold in Cairo takes only 1 day in Aleppo. Al Medina Souk, perfectly located at the crossroads of the Middle East. Centuries of trading has allowed it to be, before the war, the largest covered market in the world. Over 13 kilometers of goods and produce navigate its way through the covered complex. Old proverbs would say that a blind merchant can find his way around the souk just by using his nose. The inherent genealogy, therefore, of any memory starts with our senses. As discovered while smouldering my grandparents' home in Aleppo, all that information is waiting to be unpacked, even if the associated sense isn't physically stimulated. The image, therefore, proves to be a fundamental tool for reconstruction, both mentally and digitally. Spaces unfold, textures felt, and aromas can be smelt. This process, however, of seeing between images is not without its obstacles. The resolution of one's memory, as well as the accuracy of an image, can both refine and distort. After visiting my grandparents' new home in Stockholm, Sweden, you immediately understand the difficulties of domestic displacement. A simple comparison between their old and new home highlights the weight that memory can add to a simple picture of a space. 3 thresholds were examined: the corridor, computer desk, and balcony. 3 parts all relating to the living room, the most documented space in their Aleppo home. In fact, what the pre-war photos of the family home highlight is Syrian domesticity that's rarely exposed in Western cultures. Nowadays, when people discuss Syria, it's in the context of war, refugees, and terrorism. In order to change this perception, we must first examine the role domesticity plays in Aleppan culture. Kahawi, the traditional Aleppo coffee house, a shining example of pre-war public domesticity. A living room for all. This was a place that could be described as having no function but to host. Pipes were smoked, coffees were drank, games were played, but most importantly, stories were told. Sadly, however, the war has seen a decline in displacement of these public living rooms, a tradition that has followed my granddad all the way to the atrium of a suburban shopping centre in Stockholm, challenging the role space plays and quenching our urge to seek nostalgic thresholds. This will be my site. Photographs, videos, and scans all contribute to the ever-growing digital memorializations of the spaces we inhabit. Indiscriminate flurries of data are digitally preserving events, objects, and spaces of both personal and historic significance. Even documenting destruction becomes a valuable source of information, as it allows for the extraction of materials and textures. The true value of this data does not lie with its forensic ability to locate or to prove, but instead to trigger and to teach. Aleppan domesticity is slowly being archived. There are, however, already realms of the digital which use memory and domesticity, such as video wargames, though their purpose is to reconstruct convincing and immersive environments of war. So unlike the pre-war family photos of Aleppo, Syrian domesticity would be exposed to Western culture just as a mere stage, domesticity in war rather than war in domesticity, becoming digitally repurposed as well as militarily. Going back to the reconstruction of my grandparents' home in Aleppo, it's clear that there was a lot missing, so my grandma was able to literally furnish my memories with hers purely through discussion. The only physical object they have from Syria is this ivory souvenir. It was in the drawer underneath the TV cabinet. As mentioned previously, commerce laid a unique foundation for Aleppan domesticity. However, the influence flowed both ways. Khan, or caravanserais, are a perfect example of how domesticity became an important part of the souk's infrastructure. Khans were essentially domestic incisions within the market complex, offering passing merchants accommodation, manufacturing facilities, and storage capacities. Over time, each khan became specialized at the surrounding trades, such as Khan al-Sabun, soap caravanserai. This is a strong example of how the domestic hosts the commercial. It's important to recognize the context from which these displaced traditions emerge, which in this case happens to be a shopping mall atrium in suburban Stockholm. What brought my granddad and his newly found Syrian friends here? What makes them spend almost half the day chatting away amongst the shoppers? For sure, the reasons are both personal and fragile. However, correlations can be drawn between the two. Atriums are both versatile and generic, becoming the space between shopping where one can linger, meet and rest, as well as socialize, drink and play. Is the souk and the coffee house somehow evoked in the mall? This is precisely where my proposal of a public domestic forum will engage, aiming to capitalize on this unique case of displaced domesticity to further flourish the gathering of Syrians within the mall, whilst mediating between and educating both Syrian and Swedish locals about Aleppan domestic culture. At the heart of the reappropriated atrium is a composition of spaces found in my grandparents' Aleppo home, which are aligned to an axis running between Aleppo and Stockholm, as well as being arranged between each other to both reflect and abstract their past use. The entrance, balcony, utility room, bathroom, kitchen and bedroom form a domestic exhibition of memory and meaning, all of which sit on a textural landscape that memorializes the roofscape of the Al Medina Souk, generated using military drone footage. Each room negotiates between the specific, the generic, and the sensual. The specific being the digitized reconstructions of my grandparents' home, the sensual being the archived materials and textures, and the generic which superimpose the two. All three typologies come together, creating kaleidoscopic junctions of memory that are both digitally rich and physically sensitive. As mentioned previously, the project fluctuates between personal and digital memory, which becomes evident when you understand that the junctions are also partially informed by the methodology of digitally archiving. The digital ingredients which make up the physical, in fact, originate from personal memories of physical spaces, objects, and events. It's the multiple digital translations of domesticity which distinguish it from video games which just imitate. These digital appropriations result in moments of curiosity and vague familiarity. Memory and our senses are inseparable, meaning even the most nuanced sensory triggers like smell, sound and texture, which can be found in the famous Aleppo soap made from olive trees, doesn't only carry the city's industrious reputation, but more importantly allows for architectural reconstructions to be mentally superimposed onto their immediate context. So much like the old Aleppan proverb, a shopper can also find his way around the mall just by washing his hands. Over 100,000 Syrians have been given asylum in Sweden, leaving behind not just their homes, but more importantly what it means to be from Aleppo. My granddad and his friends are proof that culture can survive displacement, even if it is found next to H&M. This project does not resolve anything. It preserves, or at the very least, it tries to remember. Thank you.